Alright, today we're going to be looking at just how we're going to turn crash landings into safe landings. Yes, and you heard me right. How do we actually turn crash landings into safe landings? Well, first of all, let me just get something straight. I said it this way is because I wanted everyone to know how difficult and important it is to make a safe landing. There are usually three things that you have to consider when you are making a landing. Number one, you got to consider the weather. You got to consider where you are at. Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is it clear skies? Is it cloudy? Do you have high visibility, low visibility? Stuff like that. The second thing that you have to look out for is your plane. The plane that you are flying, if it's a big plane like 747 or an A380, well, it's going to be a lot easier because the plane doesn't glide or doesn't move that much in the wind. But as the plane gets smaller, like maybe a 777 or even an A320 or Cessna, as it gets smaller, it gets lighter. So what happens is that when you have strong winds as your plane comes in, if your headwind is strong or if you have strong gusts, then you're going to have a lot of problem trying to land a plane and you have to do a go around. And the third attribute is the runway. Now, as I mentioned, you got to look out for where the runway is. Sometimes the runway is very visible from where you're at. If you're lining up from your glide slope, 1,000 feet, you should be able to see your runway. If not, well, you can always depend on your instruments, your IFR, and you can still should be able to see everything on the ground. If not, you can always do a go around because sometimes anything can happen. Sometimes the ground, there may be debris or there may be birds passing or there may be a truck that for some reason is just out there, hasn't gone back in yet, or wild animal. It can be anything and you really got to know what it is. So, yep, that's one of the things that you've got to take note. And it's one of the things that we'll be talking about today. So, first things first, we'll talk about the crashes and, how we'll discuss here a bit about the disasters and what has happened throughout history back from when we were flying up until today. Yep. So some of the deadly disasters were, the planes have crashed into mountains, have landed in the oceans, have tried landing on top of tree lines, and even crashed on open fields or like busy roadways. Yeah, there's been a lot of crashes. If you go online, you definitely can find those. So there's no short of videos showcasing all this kind of how you say disasters that have happened so far. So why I said in the title, when crash landings become safe landings, what I was referring to is, how do we make crash landings into safe landings? How do we actually look at safe landings as the base point of everything? I don't really know if that's the right thing to say, but it sounds like it's the wrong thing to say. But what I mean is, just how can we make safe landings more safe? So yes, oftentimes there's a lot of things that go wrong. For instance, you have bad communications. ATC doesn't give you proper clearances. Sometimes pilots, they have a bit of miscommunication and they don't call out the faults fast enough. Sometimes there is disagreements between captains and first officers. There's so many things that can go wrong, in a landing or even in takeoff. So it's really, really hard to say what is the one main cause of landings or disaster landings. Second thing, the planes. Now, when you're looking at planes, you really, really got to see what's the key difference between the two. Um, Big planes, small planes. There really is a lot to look at. If you are looking at, um, I have no idea what else to say, but let's just say. So there are a few things that you have to consider when you are flying small planes, small general aviation planes. It's a lot easier to manage. First of all, you don't have that many passengers, so you're not so concerned. Of course, you are, but you know, you just have to. It's easier for you to pay close attention because if anything you need the passengers to do, you can communicate straight with them. They're just right behind you. When we are talking about big airliners or even military aircraft, there's a lot of communication involved between you, the cabin crew, or you and ATC, or you and the passengers, or whoever the men are. If you are flying a military craft, it takes a few more seconds, and on a plane in the midst of a airborne emergency, what it's really every second counts, every moment counts, and you really need everything to be communicated properly and rightfully so that you can get things done. And thirdly, of course, you have people's lives in your hands. You know, when lives are lost, it's not just the people on board that suffer. It's not just the pilots, the cabin crew, the passengers. It's also everyone else that's involved. Loved ones, ATC, the airline suffers. Bystanders who are, who just happen to see them in coming around. There's really anything that can, anyone and everyone will be affected. So yeah, in a disaster, you can never really tell. Okay, so moving on to the next one. Let's look at some of the things that actually can affect. Let's look at weather attributes. So weather attributes, bad weather always causes flight delays, and flight delays are the number one things that really make things go wrong in an aircraft. I mean, on a flight. So why? What's so devastating about bad weather? Well, to put it clearly, if everything isn't that good, you won't want to take off in bad weather. Yeah, you always need clear blue skies. You always need everything to be right, especially if you are flying long haul flights. You don't want anything to happen just before takeoff because your plane, number one, is loaded with a lot of fuel. And if anything happens, your plane can't land immediately. It has to dump all that excess fuel because the shocks, the landing gear, are not going to be able to hold the plane up. So that's not going to be very good. Yeah. Also, if you look at the dimensions of which the plane has to use, the runway, the larger the aircraft, the longer the runway that is needed. And so the larger the plane, the wider the wingspan, you're going to need a much bigger runway. Sometimes when you are doing a go around or when you're doing a landing, if you're unable to land at the airport for some reason, it's hard to find a nearby airport that is big enough. And the larger the plane, it's going to be more difficult, not because of anything, but it's just because of the runway that you have in front of you. Does it have the capacity and is it built to land large aircrafts? This is something that all pilots and crew know. Whenever they are unable to land when they are talking about diverting to another runway, it's really a big concern because the larger the aircraft also means that can they fly the bird all the way to the other runway and land? Does it have enough fuel? Can it make the journey with everyone on board? Is the runway clear and open? Has the runway been checked? So many things contribute to landing just one aircraft. So you can really imagine what goes into it. Second thing, plane attributes. So like I said, the larger the plane, the more difficult it is to land. If you have a 747, 747, if I'm not wrong, the height is about 19 meters, about 6-story building. So if you are driving a car and you're just pulling into the parking lot or what, it's a lot easier to see because the car is less than 2 meters off the ground. But you're talking about 19 meters, really high, and pilot's judgment and experience and skill really comes into play when it comes to landing this giant behemoth. And the 747 is way bigger than 737, which is really something that massive, something that heavy. Landing something so huge and wide really takes a lot of experience, uh, a lot of knowledge, because to go to land such a big plane, yeah, it's really not an easy feat. People have difficulties parallel parking a car. Can you imagine trying to land a plane, flying machine in mid-air with no way of actually aligning yourself other than the runway? Yep. So that's going to be crazy coming in at that distance when you're looking at the amount of fuel that it has, especially when it's jet fuel. It's going to ignite really fast at the slightest spark. Yeah. So of course, if you have smaller planes like the A320 and or an F-18 landing, which if you stay all the way to the end of the video, it will be right there. I have a few clips on landing an A320 and F-18. So yeah, do stick around. So the last thing that you really want to look at is, how you're going to handle the landing of such a big plane. Believe it or not, the runways have to be really special. Your plane, once it lines up at 1,000 feet, coming in, with flaps 2, bringing your speed all the way down to 160, 145 knots, landing the aircraft. That runway really has to have enough pressure and enough good build to really make it work. If not, it's not going to be able to hold up on that large, what you call, runway. Yeah. When you're looking at such a thing, you are really looking at how good is the runway, what's the runway made of, can it land properly, will it skid, are you off center, can you really hold out? Yeah, all these things attribute when you're flying the plane. Also, the other thing that is really scary is that as you're turning in, sometimes weather patterns they change. Thunderstorms can build all of a sudden, clouds can form out of nowhere and reduce the visibility by a lot. So pilots really, really have to decide. The captains really have to know, have to be familiar with the area. If not, they have to use their experience and their knowledge of flying to really decide and decipher the whole equation before they actually take a turn to line up for the runway and land. Can they land in such a location at this point in time? So yes, everything comes into play, right? Hopefully, with everything that is working out, like the landing gears, the brakes, hopefully everything was still intact from the time that they took off 8 hours ago to the time that they landed. So let's just, pilots usually rely and put all their trust in the engineers and the ground crew who have already done all the necessary check and maintenance, so that it really works out for them. When everything comes together, comes into play, it's going to work out really well. Yeah. So let's just talk about the landing. As the landing is coming up, what else can we do when the plane comes to land? Well, first of all, there are a few things that captains look out for. Well, as they are recording of their flight path, what is it that's happening, looking at all the different things that is being lined up, seeing how high they are, where they are. There are always about 3 things that they look out for. Do they look out? One of the things is, what's the weather like? Is there a fog? Is a fog building? Next thing that they look out for is rain. What is it like? Where are the different weather patterns or weather systems are building up right now? Are they going to be affecting the aircraft? Will there be any lightning or any clouds build up that could interfere with the landing equipment as it's coming in? Because if there's a lightning strike, it's really going to be hard to pull up a plane if a plane shuts down as it's coming into land. So of course the best scenario that every pilot wants is to have clear skies. If not, they're going to have to do what's called a go around, meaning they're going to have to abort the landing and they're going to have to go around and hopefully things clear up within the next 5-10 minutes and they will have a good clear window to land. Next thing that, like I said, we'll be looking at 747, a really large aircraft descending from 35,000 feet, slowly descending to 25,000 feet, slowly descending to 14,000 feet, and then to 8,000 feet, and then to 5,000 feet, 3,000, and eventually 1,000 for the Glideslope in. So this is really, the bread and butter of a pilot learning how to land an aircraft. This is really what they have to get used to, landing an aircraft. So hopefully everyone knows what is it that they are doing. Cabin crew is going to get everyone ready as they come in, and the pilots are going to have to really commit to the landing once they have decided that this is how they're going to do it. Yeah. Lastly, as the plane comes in, you've really got to make a few calculations. One is you've got to look at where is your headwind going to be, right? Is it going to be in front of you? Is it going to be to your side? And if you watch many landing videos, you always see that the plane as it's coming in, it tend to drift. Why? Because gust of wind, never underestimate Mother Nature. She's a lot stronger than you think she is. So never underestimate her. And so thankfully, if everything goes well, if there's clear skies and good weather, all landing will be smooth like this. You won't have to worry about coming in on the right time or at the wrong place. Everything's just going to be spot on. Yeah. Of course, descending in from 1,000 feet, you're coming in at about 130 knots, about from 10 to 5 miles, nautical miles out. You're going to be doing everything in 2 minutes because you'll be dropping at 700 feet per minute. So pilot's instinct, the pilot's intuition, the pilot's experience, everything comes into play at this point of time. Yeah. And if you are thinking of becoming a pilot, this is one of the things that you have to remember. Landing is the most difficult thing that the pilot has to do. I think somewhere it wrote landing is the greatest thrill, and takeoff is second. So yeah, I'm sure if you are a keen aviator, if you love planes, you would already know this. So yeah, landing is an art form only chosen by a few. Yeah, planes are great. Landing is really tough. So if you want to go out and learn how to fly, learn how to land. Practice your landings. The more you practice, the better you get at it, the better you fly a plane. Trust me. Landing is most important because to come in smoothly and come in at a controlled pace is very different from landing a fighter jet or let's say, I don't know, a helicopter. Yeah. Because when you're coming smooth, you have passengers on board. These passengers are not, familiar to flying as you are. So you got to make the plane land as smoothly as possible and as safe as possible, of course. That's first. So that, the passengers won't have, won't throw up right in the middle of the landing in their seat, which is gonna get the cabin crew all, hyped up around the captain and be like, "Boy, what? Hey, what happened to the landing?" Yeah. So as you can see here, this is the beautiful British Airways. She's coming into LAX on a clear blue sky. It's not really clear blue sky with minimal clouds, and it's a good day for a good landing. 747 for British Airways. It's a beautiful craft. Too bad she's going to be retiring. If only she could be here a bit longer for another 10, 20 years. Maybe even 50 years, who knows? It would really be special to see her around. Okay, so now that we have done most of the major landings, yep, I'm going to be showing you a mid-sized plane. Here we have the Japan Airlines, the A320. Yep, she's coming in on the same runway, LAX. Yep, this is Japan Airlines A320. Beautiful aircraft, a lot fewer wheels. Yeah, and this is definitely something that everybody loves to see. Every passenger that sits on the wing, I don't know about you, but for me, it's always great to sit near the wing, the front of the wing where you get to see the engine and the turbofan spin. Just looking at the size of the engine, always wondering why is it so huge. It looks like a washing machine sideways. Yeah, and looking at the wing, it's always a marvel to see like all these little plates coming up and down. Of course, we know that they are ailerons and flaps, but to the average guy, they'll think like, oh, look at that, all the pieces are moving up and down, trying to land the plane. Wow, so cool. Yeah. So here we have the landing gear view. This view is top notch. Everybody seems to like it. It's the most requested view that I have. I'm not too sure about the other YouTubers, but for me, this is the one that everyone's requesting about. So yeah, here you have the landing. Don't forget to look out at the engines because there's going to be the reverse thrusters once the tires hit the tarmac. Yeah. So keep a lookout for that as she's coming in. It's beautiful, beautiful sight. If only we could see these more often. Yeah. So we're coming in. Touchdown. Reverse thrusters engaged. So that's great. Everything's looking fine, looking good. And of course, this isn't the only aircraft. I know you guys like to see an F-18. And as promised, I decided to bring in something a bit special. Something I'm sure everyone will appreciate. Look at that. Seriously, that is one of the best views that one could ever see when a plane is landing. It's a nice thing to catch. Yep, so like I mentioned, right now we'll be moving into taking a look at how Tom Cruise, or should I say Maverick, how he's gonna land his F-18 at LAX. Yeah, so here's the beautiful Maverick. I mean the beautiful aircraft that Maverick flies. The F-18. Yep, if you have seen the Top Gun, show, leave something in the comments below, like, hey, when's Top Gun 3 coming out? Or if you know when Top Gun 3 is coming out, let me know. And smooth landing. Everything's a lot different. Smaller plane, it's a lot lighter, it comes in faster. So if it's a heavier plane, then it takes a while. And yep, that's it, I think.